he'd come in the booth and I'd put him on the microphone. I'd say, this is my friend George Roman, the Beverly Hills Love Guru, and we'd talk about what he did. And people would wander in to see him, and he'd start doing readings for them. This was when I first met him, before he got into the face reading things. So he'd just talk to them and he'd start telling them things.
You know what?
I'll put it over here. Actually, the manager of the store one day, George had no idea who this guy was. And George told him, and he said, you're an unhappy person. And you're looking around for something else, I know, and you're going to be leaving very soon. I can tell you're not happy there. And this guy he's a very particular person. Embarrassed because he was in front of all his employees. Imagine it, bright red. And I loved it because, George is very direct about this. He said, you're not a happy person, are you? And you're leaving. You're going to be leaving soon. You can't wait to leave.
Oh my gosh.
It was just great. But then people would come in and they'd say, do me a reading. And George wouldn't. He'd read for people, because this was all stuff that he was doing for promotion. It wasn't paid. And I know he would do it for people that he liked or was interested in. But if he had obnoxious people come up to him saying, do me a reading, what do you think of me? He'd very expertly not do anything.
Oh yeah, of course.
You used to do that with the handwriting. Bert used to do handwriting analysis.
Handwriting.
And everybody that
Well, yeah, suddenly everybody wants something.
They still do that.
And they still do.
Oh, well, tell me all about me.
Well, you do it for a living, you have to protect that, and so George knew you had to protect that. But people that were around him that he was interested in, he liked to just start telling him about himself. And I remember to me, he said, you are just like Michael. He said, you're so caught up in the details, you just lose the big picture. He said, you just don't know anything about the big picture, you're so caught up. He said, I'm watching you in your DJ booth, and you're adjusting knobs and making micro adjustments that don't even matter. Oh, Michael's like that. It drives me crazy. It drives me nuts. Michael will spend all day making these tapes, and making these music tapes, and he's spending so much, and it drives me nuts.
Last time I saw him, I had my hair like this blood red color, this pinky blood red, and I'd been blonde when I met George, and I'd always been blonde, and George really liked blonde hair, so he saw there, and I walked into the restaurant, and he just started laughing. Like he couldn't contain himself.
I love George's laugh.
Oh yeah, he just sort of burst out laughing, and he started going like this, just like staring, like winking at me. And I was like, George, what? He's like, you look terrible. But
But George could tell you almost anything about yourself, and it wouldn't be offensive.
No, right.
Because because of the generous heart, he did it because he cared. And sometimes when somebody's so direct, you just can't. You can't take it the wrong way. You can't take anything George says the wrong way because there's only one way to take it.
Right.
Same building, oh.
I'm not sure. We've been always working, so originally we came from Russia, so you teach us your English a little bit. But the first time I remember him very well, it was after earthquake. And my husband saw him before earthquake unloading a big, huge pilots of water, and he asked him why you were doing this. It's not enough water, or why? He said, I do some preparation for it. And Lenny never mentioned to me about it until after earthquake. And then he said, oh, I need to introduce you to this guy because he is amazing. So yeah, it was once it was a time, and we got introduced, and since that time we had a really very warm and very good relationship. He always came to visit us. He was a really big-hearted man, and I love about him is his sense of humor, which was very unusual, as already been said, that he was very direct, and his humor was direct too. Yeah. And last time I saw him, he always call me and around the time of my birthday, and we always see each other around that time. So it was, I believe it was in April, and at that time I was without work, and I was worrying too much about how things will go for me if the situation wasn't really good.
In different houses.
And we moved to another house at that time, and we were sitting, and at that time he was into Chinese. Just a second. He brought a Chinese. I don't remember what was the name, Chinese book. I don't remember. So he said, give me the page and make a wish, and I'll tell you what will be for you in the future. So I did, and he read me that page, and it was very fuzzy. So he said, okay, I will explain it to you. And he said, you know what you're doing? When the wind, a huge wind blow outside, you try to hold the tree which wind bends. And you cannot do this because wind wants to do what it wants to do. So for you, it will be better just to sit inside and watch this wind to bend the tree and learn from it. And it was true. This was the time for me to think, not to make any action. And I think this is a very vivid picture of him, to think about things and to feel it, and don't rush into the action, but think before.
On the other hand, he was always rushing into the action. Whatever was new for him,
You know,
he was in there.
without thinking. Another
He
thing
was
what
trying to involve you in everything he was doing.
Yeah, that's true. He said, oh, you know, you have such a power, you have to go into speaking. You will fire people up and they will listen to you, and you have to do this. So he invited me in a couple of seminars which I never attended. But you know what I want to say, and this is probably the most important thing. I talked to him, and he was waiting for his 36th birthday, and he was born in the year of dragon. And he said, you know what's my dream? We start talking about dreams. He said, my most important dream, which I want to fulfill, is to make a mark in the history of other people, in the history of my life, like a dog under the tree, to make a mark so people will remember me. I want to do something great. So I will be remembered, and it will make me feel very, very good. And when Carol called me and I learned about his death, I asked her if he fulfilled his dream, and he said probably not, because he didn't have enough time. And it just really happened very soon.
That's what he told me, that he wasn't ready to die because he wanted to make a mark. He wanted to leave a mark. Yeah.
The last plans he told me about, it was to go into some website, to create his own website or something. It was a really, really huge, big plans which fall into his lap very unexpectedly, but it was a big deal for him, and I don't know how it ended up.
How older was George? You know, when he passed away?
He was 36.
He was 36?
Yes.
That's all?
On August 25, it was his 36th birthday. Why I remember it, because he always said Christmas in August.
Okay.
Where's he from originally?
Hungary.
No, Boston.
No, I know, but
His family.
his family,
Mother's from Hungary.
yes, his mother was from Hungary. He was born in here.
Yeah, from Boston. His original name was Heavan, beautiful Hungarian, and that's how we met. I have a Hungarian wife. And I met his mother, and she was overjoyed because somebody could speak Hungarian in class. It more than annoyed George, but I said, you know, hey, she's got someone to talk to now. So don't bug her. And every time she came to California, they come to my house. She'd always bring a bottle of wine, and she'd sit there, and I'd cook Hungarian foods for her. And I was with her when she died. 95.
I actually drove her to the hospital.
Yeah.
She was visiting George.
Yeah, she was with George. I used to cook meals and bring them down because George didn't cook. And I bring meals down. And all her Hungarian favorites. And of course, George was a staunch vegetarian, and I would always cook for her. So he often say, why don't you cook something vegetarian? I said, Hungarians don't like vegetarian. They'd rather gnaw on a bone than eat, straight vegetarian.
So you live in a building?
No. He and I met 300 years ago at a seminar. We were both working for this seminar. We were working the table in the back of the room. And I noticed his Hungarian name, and I started talking Hungarian. And rather blank, it said, no habla. So I said, oh, okay. And then we had coffee, and then we were friends ever since.
Are you a reader?
No. That's George's
Well, you
profession.
said you were at a seminar.
Yeah, an LP seminar. And he was working the table with me, making out name tags and taking money and stuff like that.
You brought his mother over to New York.
Yeah.
I took her out to a Hungarian church in the valley, and I took George out after she died. They did a service just for her, but I translated for George because he didn't understand the language, but they did a service.
Are you guys telling great stories already?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man! One of his very best friends is lost. He went to the wrong Sam setting. He was on Sam setting near the Beverly Center. We're just a little bit late to get officially started, but save your best stories for all of us. I can tell everybody to come in. Should we just do that?
But stop talking.
You guys,
We did.
you're already on the way.
We're done. It's too late.
Let's just, why don't we just get in? And for those of you who have shoes on, let's take our shoes off.
Yeah, you're the agent, right? You got in the party?
Well, I call myself an entrepreneur. They call me.
I'm the guy that waited for him out in front in the rain when he had that party up in Mulholland.
Oh.
Because he was telling me about that. I sat out in the rain waiting for him.
Yeah. You don't punch me out there, huh?
No, it was, all the parking was taken up and I,
It's hard to do sometimes for parties for somebody's with an entertainer to go inside.
well, I showed up, I'm very prompt. I usually show up when somebody asks me to.
Didn't he drive?
No,
He never drove?
I drove around.
You drove around for all the parties?
Most of them.
He didn't have a car for a while. Yes. He just had a car. Yeah.
Oh, she didn't get around, all right. He's able to, with good friends like you, he can get around. Well, thank you. Yeah, we have to be.
Everybody feel free to use these things to sit on.
Do we have any?
Yeah, that's
There's pillows up there you can sit on.
But one of his friends is late, so. Nice. Duck. Good.
Expanding the circle here.
Oh, I love this one.
Oh, is that your color?
Yeah, I love it.
Well, my aura is this color, so I should do it.
Right now?
Kidding. Supposedly.
You kind of start fading when you have that color here because it blends in.
Oh, right. You can't have that. I think we need to be bigger. Bigger.
Why don't we, wow, there's less intimacy here. Huh?
So cool.
I guess, yeah.
There's probably still more people coming.
Yeah, there are, but you know what, they're gonna be like another 20 minutes, so they said we can go ahead and start. So, welcome everyone.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we start with going around the circle and saying our names and where we're from and how long we met George, just to kind of introduce each other
That's
to
a
the
great
circle, and then do the next thing after that.
name's Mike Herman. I've known George for almost 6 years. Consider him one of my best friends and vice versa. And I live here in LA.
I'm Diane Cordova. I'm from San Francisco. I've also known George about 6 years, and I love him dearly.
And if we can speak a little louder, because I'm videotaping this, that'd be great.
Or I'll give you a hard copy. Oh, no.
Stephen Stuckey. I guess I've probably known George. I've lost track, but I didn't know him that well. We met many different times over the years at the Sidereal School of Astrology. So I probably met him for the first time at least 10 years ago, I think. And I live here in Los Angeles, and
yeah, I met George probably around the
Name?
same time. My name's Bill Levesey, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Bill. Drop the Coke. Drink of choice.
Anyway, I met him about 10 years ago, along with Steve at the Sidereal School of Astrology, and ran into George many times in astrological connections and things like that. And what was neat about that was that every time you met with George, it was very complete and intense. Even though you hadn't seen him for a while, it was always very full. So that was my short story about George.
I'm Carol Allen. I met George about 9 years ago through a School of Vedic Astrology. He was one of my first teachers and one of my great champions.
I'm Dave Richards, and haven't you heard this before? But I've known George about 4 to 5 years. I'm the DJ at the Virgin Mega Store in Hollywood, and I met him because Michael loved music, and Michael used to come and look at music, and George would get bored and come and talk to me. And I concur with what you said, that every meeting with him was very full, and every time I saw George, I'd get a full update, and there was always something new happening in his life. It was always very interesting. So that's the short story.
My name is Jim Takis. I met George 2 months after he emigrated to Los Angeles. He was always, to me, Uncle George. That may seem strange to you, but for some reason, it was just right for us. He was always Uncle George.
Grab yourself a mat.
Jim is my brother, so I met George through him. More of a personal friend. I'm not involved in any of the projects that George or Jim is involved in. But I've talked to him over the phone. I've been doing it personally. And he did a couple of astrology programs for me. One through the place and date of birth type of thing, and the other through the tarot cards. Which kind of proves to be right so far. But anyway, speaking of Uncle George, we had a greeting for him that he kind of laughed at. May I say it?
Well, please do.
Hey, whenever he called or when he stopped by at the house or something, he said, "Hey, Uncle Fuck, how the George are you?" He was a good person. Good.
My name's Kara, and I know George, like a lot of you, from the School of Vedic Astrology. And he would have us laughing so hard in the first Wednesday of every month that literally my back would hurt so bad. But it was just such great therapy, just laughing therapy, and it's a great group of people. So that's how I know George.
Kara started this center, by the way. She's responsible for this fabulous space.
My name is Bert Epstein. I'm the owner of Lucky Entertainment for 34 years. I met George 12 years ago when he came over. I always interview the people before I send them out to any kind of a party or promotion. So he came over and he read for me and said, "All right, I'll give you a try." So I sent him out to parties, and I used to get very good responses. And through the years, he's developed his style where before he was just doing the reading, and then he had his face reading. And then he became very strong in his activities in that area. I'm also a member of Toastmasters Club, so I invited him one time to, as a nice compliment on his part, and in providing his services for Toastmasters installation. He was the hit of the party there. He's going on each person, very direct, as you all know, and telling exactly what it is. And in his humorous fashion, though, people accept it very well, and he's very well received. So it's unfortunate that I lose a good performer, and if we have anybody else who can take his place, I'm interested in using anybody.
Well, I don't think you could get anyone to take his place. He was unique. I'm Maria Stein, and the first time I saw him really entertain at full force was at this Toastmaster meeting, and he was just a great hit. He was unbelievably right on because we knew some of the people and he got them exactly right. And he was just a wonderful entertainer, and we'll miss him.
I'm Missy. I knew George for about 4 years. I used to wait tables in West Hollywood, and he was one of my regular customers, and he used to come in once a week, and then we just became great friends, so he would come in like 3 or 4 times a week, and I worked there. You know, he was very, very fun, and it was just always a pleasure to have him come in and, you know, just have a conversation with him every day, and he was amazing. So when I left Pizzeria, and that's where I worked, we continued to be great friends, and I feel really blessed to have him in my life.
I'm Matt. I live in the same apartment as Missy, so I couldn't help but meet George many times. And he was a neat guy. He was, yeah, I haven't really met anybody like George. No, that's probably the best. Yeah, he was very, very interesting. And I even got to use him in a project of mine at one point because I put him in a book that I had done. It was a book about the history of flipping people off. And George had his picture, he gave me his headshot, and a column talking about the future of flipping off. And he came to my book signing and signed more books than I did. And he kept trying to get me to go to his seminars on self-publishing and all this other stuff. Okay, George.
My name is Tatiana. I cautiously know George since 1994. We lived together in one apartment building. He lived on the second, we lived on the third floor. And George always surprised and stunned me with such a vital energy. He always spread it around. And I will always remember him like this. Happy, vital, energetic, humorous, straight. I think very direct.
It's the only way you could mean it.
Hi, I'm Todd, and I met George through an Anthony Robbins sales seminar about 10 years ago, and we've been pretty good friends ever since. I always remember every time we went out, we always went to like the soup plantation.
Yes, I met him at soup once.
Yeah. And one thing I can remember going into his apartment is I've never seen anyone have so many books. If anyone's been inside of his apartment, this guy, every chance he got, he would go to the bookstore and buy more books. And shelves of books. It's like a mini library on self-improvement, metaphysics, every subject you can imagine. And I thought that was really interesting because it really opened me up to a lot of things that I really didn't care about at the time and didn't even know existed. And he was really like an older brother to me.
I'm Lenny, I'm Tatiana's husband, so you understand we met like 10 years ago. We used to live in the same apartment building. And what I really want to say about George, he was a very helpful person. He was trying to help everybody. When I started real estate career, he introduced me to so many people. He was pushing me, let's go, I'll introduce you. He actually created my first ad in Russian newspaper, and which I ran for like a year or so, and it was amazing ad. Remember this ad? It was beautiful, and he was unbelievably helpful person. I'm gonna miss him.
My name's Dina, and I never had the privilege of meeting George. I'm here with David Armstrong, but I have heard some wonderful stories, and sorry I never had the opportunity to meet him.
My name is Lynn, and I also know George through Mr. Armstrong. I haven't seen, probably the last time I saw George was 10 years ago. But I talked to him when he did a reading for me about 3 weeks ago, and the time that I had spent with George and Dave, it was very interesting. They're quite a team. He's a wonderful person. He did this amazing reading for me, and when I told him I was interested in writing something, he gave me so much information. He's just, what can you say? I just love him. He's a wonderful person, and
I'm William. I had the privilege of knowing George for many years, and we used to spend many long shows together. And I too was very excited about his enthusiasm, his excitement about life. He was always a very giving, upbeat, exciting person. And, he made many contributions to my life in many ways. Knowledge, information, books, classes he introduced me to, techniques in astrology and other disciplines. And I was always amazed at this huge collection of books and tapes. I think he'd gone to every seminar in existence and had all the tapes. And he was just such a caring person. And I think I'll always remember him for his great giving nature, his love of other people, his excitement about life. He was a master of self-promotion. And just a really great guy, so I'll really miss him.
Okay, Dave is going to sit next to Diane where I was sitting and complete the circle.
Well, when it comes to George, I mean, what can we say? How do you put it into words? George was one of my very dear, closest friends, and in a lot of ways, he was like a brother to me. We really, had some very fun times together. And I've had the opportunity to meet and become dear friends with a lot of people who are here today through George. And if George were here right now, I'm sure he is, but I'm sure he'd be thrilled to know that we're all here and we've come together to honor him. I guess I could leave it with George. He taught me, great etiquette at restaurants, how to order bread. How to really do it. Missy, is this not true? Oh yeah, and pizzas back with flies and getting meals comped. I'll never forget those techniques.
And I have to say that I taught him most of those.
In a lot of ways, I'll miss George, but it feels as if he's still here. So anyway, I still hope to have a lot of very fun times and remember George for the energy that he had.
Well, what I thought we'd do now is read a couple of things that some people have sent, and I can squeeze by them for a second.
The Personology convention is this weekend, so all of his personology kind of friends going to come. Oh yeah, we're going to get into it more.
Okay. I have the note here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Personology Institute was where George got his training and where he continued up until early this year to go for re-education and more brushing up, and really kind of, I think he was really proud of the level of expertise that he had, because he said to me several times, is there anyone from the Personology Institute here? Okay, good. He said to me a couple times that they were jealous of him because of the way that he was able to market it so successfully and more so than anyone else in the business. Am I right there?
Absolutely.
And they sent this card with the bouquet of flowers outside. It says, with deepest sympathy, to George's friends, he will be remembered and honored. His spirit will live on with long thoughts and loving blessings. Bill and Janelle, I think it's the Wallace. Birds.
Yeah, they sent the flowers out there on the table.
And, wow, there's, why don't I read one and someone else reads one and someone else reads another? Is that okay? So, do we have any volunteers?
I read one.
Read one? How about if I start? From the Personology Institute in Capitola, dated October 23rd, which is that the day after he died?
It's like a...
Oh, the next week, okay. And it's addressed to Carol. Dear Carol, my wife Janelle and I were friends of George Roman. George had been a guest in our home in Capitola near Santa Cruz on numerous occasions and had studied personology with us. He graduated as a certified personologist teacher from the Personology Institute in 1999. Janelle and I have many fond memories of George. One in particular was George taking us to brunch in Marina Del Rey at the Cheesecake Factory. Ironically, we catered today's event. We spent 3 hours having a most delightful time at the restaurant with George, regaling us with some of his showbiz experiences. We watched him on television whenever he was on a talk show. He loved personology and was one of our best marketers. George lived his life intensely and at a faster rate than the average person. He was bold, audacious, dramatic, and intense about everything. We are all, quote, on the road together, close quote. I believe that is what life is all about, making our best effort to be all that we can be during our time on earth. In my mind, that is what George was doing. He will be missed, but he will not be forgotten. He will be remembered. I want to share some words with you that I ran across a few years ago. They seem appropriate as I think of George. I spent 7 years in the U.S. Navy, and it is customary to refer to sailing ships in the female gender. However, I have changed the following passages to masculine to reflect my thoughts of George, and you actually have the next page. Yes?
Janelle?
Yes.
All right. George Roman called me the Dragon Lady with a Heart. I acquired this title from him during his training with me and my husband because I demanded the best and would settle for nothing less. His understanding and his use of personology shows he indeed did his best. George was unforgettable. I leak. If I were to write a story about my most unforgettable character, it would be about George. He was intense, lovable, irritating, caring, entertaining, outspoken, critical, and warm, all at the same time. I knew he suffered great pain in his life, but he didn't let that slow or stop him. He lived his life to the hilt. Perhaps he somehow knew he would have precious few years to experience all that he wanted to experience. He was a psychic, you know. This dragon lady now has a deep hole in that heart
of hers that no one will ever be able to fill. I miss George very much. I am so proud of all he did for Personology, the work he loved and believed in so deeply. I will carry on his marketing work and make sure the whole world acknowledges George as the first real marketing person that ever worked with Personology. He told us we didn't know how to market this extremely valuable tool, and he was right. He showed us how to do it. He amazed me. He lifted me. He was truly a very, very special human being. George, save a place for me near you, for when I see you again, I will never forget you and your impact on my life, and on everyone you met. You finish.
May you have everlasting peace and joy. I love you, Janelle.
Life is eternal. I am standing upon the seashore. The ship at my side spreads his white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. He is an object of beauty and strength, and I stand and watch him until at length he hangs like a speck of white cloud just where the sea and the sky comes down to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There, he's gone." Gone? Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. He is just as large in mast and hull and spar as he was when he left my side, and just as able to bear his load of living freight to the place of destination. His diminished size is in me, not in him. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, "There, he's gone," there are other eyes watching him coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout, "There he comes." Sincerely, William Burtis, President.
And if anybody didn't pick up on my mistake, this was page 2. I publish a daily column that's read around the world, subscribed to by email by companies and individuals in charity magazines and newspapers. And it focuses on success and excellence and motivation and manifesting your true magnificence in life. And George was a regular topic or inspiration for moments that I've shared in the daily publication. And I'd like to read the edition from a week ago, Friday, if I might. It's dated Friday, October 20th, 2000. When the Lord created the earth, he put on it his children so that they would enjoy his brilliance. When his children began to multiply and spread far and wide, he sent special agents of inspiration from his side with the mission of watching over them. Maintain my brilliance and shine my light in the places where I might not give enough attention, he said. Good morning. The more people that were born to the world, the more special assistants, the more special assignments were appointed to stand watch. Whence their assignments were complete, whence their effect upon the world was so great that without their light, the world would seem darker. They were called back to once again sit beside the Lord. For the first several hundred centuries, they numbered few. But in recent times, more have been sent to fill the growing need for greater amounts of light. In this way, the light givers, greater amounts of light. In this way, the light givers that visit us will forever be remembered. But even more so, while they walk among us, while they shine the way, we will love them the way that our Lord has loved us by giving their presence to us. This week, one of my best friends, George Roman, passed away. He died of an aggressive form of cancer at the age of 36. Despite what the Lord might think, say, or command, I am emphatically stating that George's time was unfairly short. While there was no darkness while he was here, there was not enough light to continue brightening the world. There is no doubt that George's mission was to brighten the world. His sense of humor, his sensitivity, and his love for everyone he met was unique. His devotion to laughter, his commitment to love, and his uncanny ability to see others' souls and make them feel new and special will always be missing in this now darkened place. I know I told him how special he was to me and how his friendship brought me limitless joy and inspiration. I know how much mine meant to him as well. I know these things because we told each other in his last days. I ask you, I impress upon you, I beg you, tell those in your life that they matter. Let them know that their contribution to your existence has made the world brighter and served God well. In this way, we can continue George's mission, and in this way, we can lessen the number that God must send to help. As a postscript, you might like to know that in his last days, George Roman, a man who brought so much joy to the world, a man who never placed his own needs above others, came to terms with how loved he was and continues to be. What a way to go. I'll miss you, George. In memory of Mr. George Roman, donations, cards, and contributions can be made to the AIDS Project Los Angeles, http://www.apla.org. And I'd like to say that I received over 100 emails that day just based on that edition. So they came from all over the world. So that's something that I wanted to share. I saw a movie the other night called Pay It Forward, which is about doing something good for someone so that, not so that they owe you something, but it's like paying in advance for something that you're going to get later. And it was really an extraordinary movie, I think, and I really encourage everyone here to see it. But it made me think of George because he kind of always paid it forward. He always contributed without expecting back. And I really want to try to avoid like a sad tone here, because the purpose that Carol and I came upon when we decided to have this party was not to remorse the passing and the loss of George, but to share in what all of us were really fortunate to have is, some amazing humor and some great love and some really fun times and intense moments. I mean, George and I had really kind of irritating times, but the only fight we ever had lasted 13 minutes. And then we called each other and made up. And it was the only real bump that we ever had. So I'd just like to tell the story and then maybe pass it around the room, that the last time that I made George laugh like a hyena, which was just about 2.5 months ago, there was a concert that I wanted to go to in Los Angeles, and I couldn't get tickets. All the seats available were way in the back and really expensive and lousy seats. And I have this attitude that if you can't get in the front door, find the back door and the side door. And so I called the general manager of the theater, and I wanted to say to him, is there any way you could donate some tickets to this group of people that would like to come to the concert, or at least sell them to us so that we can get good seats? And I got him on the phone. He said, hi, how are you? I said, fine, how are you? He said, how have you been? Good. And he said, we should get together for lunch again. And I almost blurted out again. And he said, and I said, okay. And he gave us like 18 tickets. And I mean, I couldn't get 18 tickets from him going to buy them from him, I'm sure. But George just thought it was the funniest thing. He called me gorilla balls because of, you know, the way that I go about getting things done, I guess. But it was just really funny. The other thing
He told me about that. He's like, get a load of Michael Herman, man. He calls this concert hall. Yeah, he told me the story.
Another thing that happened was Dave Armstrong left George with some free coupons for lunch at the Sunset. You know the story of the hotel? The Sunset.
He loved that story.
Dave stayed last year at the Sunset Hyatt, which is down the street here, and they gave him some complimentary brunch or dinner tickets to come back and have a meal in the house. And it was for two, but I think they expired in like October or September, and we went in like in December, and we had, well, let's see, we got there and the whole hotel was like being demolished inside, and they were renovating, and the restaurant was closed. And we were really bummed because we were really hungry, and the tickets already expired, and George forged kind of a new date onto that. And so they were serving food up on the roof, on the pool deck, and it was all room service. So we went up, and we waited for like a half an hour before I decided to call down to room service and have somebody come up. Half an hour goes by, somebody comes up and takes our order. And it's like 90 degrees outside. We're sitting by the pool dressed in business clothes. And we're dying. And we asked the guy, can you bring up the drinks like soon before the food because we're really thirsty? He said, no, I can only bring up one, I can only make one trip up here. And I said, well, when is that going to be? He said, probably in 45 minutes to an hour. So George got on the guy's case, and the guy left. And like an hour goes by, and there's no food. And someone else comes up to take our order that the guy already took an hour before, and he leaves. And I said to George, you know what, I'm going to go take care of this. He said, Michael, just sit there and relax. Well, I didn't, and I went down to the manager of the hotel and told her what was going on, that we're up on the roof, there are 10 people up there waiting for drinks. The waiter is not waiting, we're waiting. Can you send someone up to do something? She called the kitchen, the order was being prepared to be another hour. So I went to Pink Dot and got something to eat and drink in the meantime. I go back, it's like 45 minutes after I left George. He's sitting there talking to these people, reading their faces. We come back, I come back up with the drinks and snacks, and the food comes up. Can anybody guess? Completely wrong and ice cold. So we complain. So the guy takes the food back down and someone else comes up. Nobody that came up a second time. So, long story short, it's like 5 or 6 different waiters helped us, and then when we left, we said something to the manager, couldn't care less. And I think that was in October of, I guess it was just about a year ago. Yeah, it was just about a year ago. And in December, I was at a speakers conference, and I met a woman who was the catering director, sales and catering director for the Sunset Hyatt. And she said, have you ever been to our hotel? And I said, yeah, actually I did. I had a horrible experience there. And she asked what happened. And I told her. And she said, oh my God, I can't believe that. You're sure it's my hotel? I said, yeah, well, sort of. I mean, how many Sunset Hyatts are there? So she went into the booth and she reached in her knapsack and grabbed out these 2 gold embossed certificates for free dinners on the house for 2 people. So I called, I walked out to him, I called George on my cell phone, and he was hysterical. He said, Michael, they're never going to let us back in there. So we went back, I guess, in January or February of this year, and we ate soup, salad, entree, dessert, wine, cheese. I mean, he would have gotten intravenous food if they would have served it. And I mean, every time we went past there, he would bring it up, and it was like a golden moment for him to have gotten the better of this hotel and just twisted the wrench a little bit. So those are my two. Those are the moments that stand out. There were so many, but somebody else go. Somebody else share something.
I have a couple sort of golden moments. The first of which was probably, I met George, as I said, '94, thanks to Dave Armstrong, who, at one point I was sitting with Dave and I said, you know what I really want to do is set up a matchmaking business. I just love putting people together, and it was sort of a hobby. He said, you have to meet my friend George Heavan, the Bly Hills Love Guru.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, tell me about it. So, he and George have been talking about setting up a matchmaking business. And they thought, George could do the real matchmaking, and Dave could sort of do the marketing ways, and I could do sort of the business person, making it all happen. And so over the course of a couple of months, we spent time creating what we were terming the Soulmate Express. And there is a picture that I've got out on the little altar out there, which is a drawing of the first logo of the Soulmate Express, which I brought for your benefit. And one of the kicks that we had as we put this together was that we thought we needed to do some due diligence and visit some of the other matchmaking organizations, one of which is called Great Expectations. And Great Expectations has a facility down here in LA with a nice library and pictures of people. And their process is normally that you go in and you are interviewed by a consultant who deems you fit to be part of the program, entitled to pay them $5,000 to be part of the program. And so Dave and I came down to LA, we visited George, and which I should say it was after I had called George for a reading because I wanted to make sure he was legit. I had never met George, and so I had this reading, and it completely blew me away, and that this is the guy I want to be in business with. He's just incredible. So the three of us went down to Great Expectations, and we requested that we be interviewed together because we were all such good friends. And a woman took us in, and she was incredible, actually. She was probably about 50, dressing as if she were about 20. I can't remember whether she had a red shirt and black bra or black shirt and red bra, but anyway, we saw both. And she proceeded to investigate each of us in terms of our personal romantic background and whether we might be at least romantically capable. And in the course of this discussion, George asked her how she could be sure that no one gay got into the program. She said, oh, no way. We do careful screening to make sure no one, and I in particular, she said, am particularly capable of identifying anyone who have gay tendencies. And I tell you, the three of us, I don't know how we kept a straight face through the whole thing. And he kept prodding, and at the end, finally, I guess to make it was a very long story, probably 3 hours or so of an encounter, long. We wound up declining, well, two of the three of us wound up declining the offer to join. And I somehow succumbed to her sales pressure and wound up signing up for this program, which I then canceled 3 days later. But in the process of this signing up, George thought we needed to get some paperwork so we would know how to set up our own paperwork to sign up. And so she left at one point in the meeting, and George reached over her desk and pulled out the sign-up form, which was in triplicate, and tore off the last page because he said, we can use this. Oh my God! And so when she came back in to sign me up, she's filling out all the forms, And when she went to divide them up, she said, oh, there's a page missing here. What? And she was just totally confused. Anyway, we laughed, and that was the story. But unfortunately, that didn't wind up materializing into business. But subsequently, as some of you may know, most recently, George and I attempted to set up another business called BioPlay, play off of biorhythms, and it was a great hope, I thought, for both of us, really, to try to leverage his experience really beyond readings, which is what he really wanted to do. So unfortunately, his illness sort of precluded us proceeding with that. But there was this one moment you mentioned, just one argument with George, and I thought this is the one time I remember arguing with George, because as you all know, he doesn't suffer fools very well. And we were on a phone call with Wilson Sonsini, which is probably the best-known law firm in Silicon Valley. Really, you have to fight to get their attention, to do anything, and to have them take you on as a client. And we were on our second call with Wilson Sonsini. They sort of agreed to take us on. And we were just clarifying some things in our conversation with them. George had some questions that he wanted to ask. And they were not answering his questions the way he wanted them to be answered. And so he began calling them stupid. And he said they didn't know anything, and who were they to think that they were so good, and we didn't need them. And I loved him. I thought he was right. They weren't answering the questions the right way, but I just said, I excused ourselves from the phone call, and we went and had a side conversation, and he said, but they don't know, they don't know what they're doing. And so anyway, they dropped us as clients. They said they weren't quite sure we could all get along on our end. But in any case, it was a wonderful experience, and just a reminder that he really, he demanded a lot of the people who would service him, and it was his strength and his knowledge of what needed to be done and what was right that was so admirable. So.
Yes. As long as you're going.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's enough for now.
Somebody else go.
Well, I'll share. Gosh. I first met George, like I said, when I was a student of Vedic astrology, and he was a Vedic astrologer, and I was only about, I guess I was like 23, and I started doing readings after only about a year or two to study, and my first teacher was like, oh, you're not experienced enough, you haven't studied enough, and he put like a big whammy on me about doing readings, and got me all sort of paralyzed, and I told George, and George was like, well, forget that, you're totally ready, and you're good enough, and he just went off. And for years, whenever I would have any kind of doubt or anything, he'd be like, don't listen to them! He was always just so behind me, just such a fighter for the underdog. It was really sweet. And then, as years went by, he came to actually refer, like if the news would call him and he wasn't up to it or he was already booked, he'd have the news call me about like the latest eclipse or the latest alignment or whatever, and that was really a great compliment. And he had done my biorhythms, of course, and I guess I have like the celebrity combination, which is like highly emotional, highly physical, low mental. Thank you very much. So George's like, Carol, you're supposed to be a star. And so whenever I would do a radio show or anything, he'd go, who's been telling you? Who's been telling you? You're gonna be famous. You're gonna be. And I'm like, George, I don't want to be famous. He wanted to be famous. I could give a flying one about fame. I'm like, just bring on the fortune, George. Fame you can keep. And he's like, you can't help it. It's your destiny. You can't help it. So he was just always great for my big head and my confidence. And for those of you who maybe weren't in a lot of touch with him in the last few months, I've told a lot of people on the phone, but I'll just share that I'm really, really so grateful that George went when he did, because he still was working, he still had dignity, he just booked like a 2-hour keynote with American Express for $5,000 to do
3 hour.
personology. Okay, 3 hour. And he just had a second audition for a new TV show, and I had just taken him to see, to have some treatment like 3 weeks before, and the doctor had said, you know, if we just keep on this track for 3 more months, you're gonna be fine. So he had so much hope still, and I had anticipated a lot more suffering for him. So I just could kiss the ground that he was able to, you know, have such a great send-off. And I'll also share, and I've shared this too, so forgive me for repeating myself, that that letter that gentleman in Personology sent about the ship, and you know, we see it sailing away and others see it coming. A dear friend of his had died a few years ago, a woman who was in San Diego, and a few months ago he had a dream that she called him on the phone and said, "Carol, it was so real, we were talking on the phone, and you know what that means." You know, it was like old friends on the other side were sort of getting in touch. And then just a few weeks before he died, he had a really lovely dream about his mother, and he and his mother were walking arm in arm down the beach. So I know that there was, you know, a welcoming committee waiting for George, and that gives me a lot of peace. And on a little lighter note, he also irritated me all the time too, of course. And when I love the story, and he killed me because I told the story in public before, and he was so mad at me, but I'll tell it now. I have a very pretty husband, and when
Very
George,
what?
pretty husband, who couldn't be here today, but when George met my husband, he was like, "He's gay, Carol. He's gay." And I'm like, "George, I've known a man 10 years. He's had girlfriends his whole life. I've slept with him 1,000 times. Okay, maybe he doesn't know now, but in his 40s, he's gonna know that he's gay." And I'm like, "You wish, George. You wish." So that's like my favorite George story. That I'm still waiting for my husband to come home and tell me, you know. To introduce me to Bob, you know.
Have you told your husband that story?
Oh, of course.
And he hasn't said, "But I have something to say"?
Right, exactly. But I know Carol George was right.
He was so proud of his gaydar.
I know. Oh, and another really quick story. I have horrible gaydar. I never know when people are gay. And I knew George for a couple of years, and it never even occurred to me. I mean, I don't, you know. First of all, he was always the guy in the gay coupling. But I just never thought about it. And one time I was at his apartment, and he was just showing me around. He had a room where he had a ton of books, and he opened the door, and there was just kind of a pile of stuff on the middle of the floor, and there was an Advocate magazine, which is a gay magazine, and he went like this, and he stood on top of the magazine, and that's when I went, oh my God, he must be gay, you know? That's when I finally figured it out, because he was so obviously trying to hide it, and I just thought that was so cute.
That's fun.
But he was just a great friend, so generous. One thing that really touched me when he was getting things going with Diane, and it looked like he could actually make something big happen, and he could maybe make a lot of money. He called me up, and this was so dear. He called me and said, "Carol, when I'm rich, I'm going to buy you a house." And I said, "George, I'll be thrilled to come visit you in your own house you buy yourself. You know, buy yourself a house, George." And he was like, no, I'm going to buy you a house. And I've been having some financial struggles with my husband. He's like, "And I'm only putting it in your name. He can live in it, but it's only in your name." And it was so sweet, because when things didn't obviously pan out, and he was, you know, he knew the extent of his illness. And one of the things one time he brought to me, he said, "I was going to buy you a house." Just killed him. So hopefully he's filling one up there for me. Just all miss him very much.
Talking about his generosity, I handle probably about 800 parties a year. I have maybe 400 or 500 different entertainers. George, every Christmas time, he knew I like sweets, I like desserts. He would always wrap up a box of See's candy, bring it over. I said, "George, I don't need it, thank you. I appreciate it." I said, No, you should have it. He'd always have the box of candy. One time I remember when his brother was in town, he brought her over now. I don't know anything about his mother or so on. So he brings her in and introduces me to her mother. Now, I don't know whether he wanted to prove he had a mother or that he was proud that he had one and could show me, or proud of me that he could show it to his mother. But she's a very charming woman, as I recall, very warm and gracious as he was. And George certainly made a remarkable impression upon me and all the entertainment people I sent out to, because he always was, as you know, very dramatic in whatever he did, very direct and dramatic. And so I always call the clients afterwards, you know, well, how did George do? Oh, he was terrific, he entertained, and blah, go on. And of course that was great, and I would always tell George, oh yeah, well, I'm the best, and he would agree with that. His minor ego set. But very warm, very loving person, very giving, so we'll remember George, and we will miss him.
I always loved it when I saw George. I'm sorry. Whenever I saw George come into the store when I was working, I couldn't help it. I would smile and I'd hug him every time I saw him, because when George walked in, I knew I was going to have a great time. I knew that however long he stayed, he was here for an hour, the next hour and a half, but it was going to be wonderful. And every time I saw him, like, my eyes lit up and I smiled and I hugged him. It was always great to see him. Always.
I'm just going to invite those who just joined us. We went around and introduced ourselves a little bit, so if we want to do that. How do you know George? Carol Beck Yuri, and friend of George, I guess, almost since he's been out here. One thing I will say about George, he shared. Just the other day, cleaning up some of my paper mess, there was George, how to get your things on the internet, who to call, where to call, phone numbers. Everything he did, he shared. He was not selfish. He was one of the most unselfish person I have ever known. He's darling. He and my daughters got along just great. In fact, my daughter was a Sport Connection addict, and they used to trade. I'm not sure what they traded, but he had got her a pass every year so she could go to the sports, World Connection and not have to worry about her parking. He had her street pass. And I don't know, he's always had that face. When you see George, he's a Leo. That's why I know, the Vedic works. He's a Leo. His face lights up like a sun. He has that sunshine face.
Well, my name's Anita, and I've known George since, also since he's been out here. The thing I'll remember most was on Wednesday nights, once a month, he used to have a card meeting for about 6 or 7 people. And we used to just laugh ourselves silly. We just had so much fun, and there was never a dull moment. And that's what I'll remember.
Hi, I'm Margie Corman. I know George from the Personology group in Los Angeles. And I'll always remember the time that the two of us were reminiscing over the telephone about our childhood, and we realized we both went to the same elementary school. Like decades ago, of course. It was the Martin Milmore School.
At the same time?
I'm sorry?
At the same time?
No,
Oh.
no, actually, and I'm not going to tell you who went there first. In Boston, Massachusetts. First it was about, oh, really? You grew up in Boston? Yeah, I grew up in Boston. It's like, what part of Boston? Oh, I grew up there too. And then to find out that we went to the same school, elementary school, it was really phenomenal. But George was so personable, and I regret that I didn't spend more time with him lately, which I had planned to.
And anyway, I'll miss him.
Next. Don't feel inhibited. If you want to say something or share something, you just want to, tell a joke or something. Say don't hesitate.
I'm Patty Giaconia. I met George when I was a producer at the Donnie and Marie show. So suffice to say, when he came to the studio through Sony Studios there, everybody was totally mesmerized by him, including Donnie and Marie. But the thing that we loved most about him was after the show, I mean, people, of course, audience members, the staff, lined up to get a piece of George. You know what I mean? Because he was just so warm and giving and loving. But since then, I formed a friendship with him. And I had been going through a really dark period of my life, being separated from my husband. And George totally reached out to me and gave of himself, assured me that life would be better tomorrow. And even in his darkest hours, because he shared his illness with me and we got to be very close, he would always make it about me. How are you today? How are you feeling about your life? How is this? How is that? And I was always so touched and moved by his generosity. And but along with that, as much as George was generous and loving and free, he loved free things. Can I have a free T-shirt at Donnie and Marie? And can I have 4 other ones for my friends? Okay. Can I have that free goodie basket? I see that you're giving that out in the room there. And I'm like, yeah, George, not a problem. Then George came back on the show, not by popular demand. And once again, it was like, those baskets you gave out to me? I'm sending it to my friends in Boston. And I was like, yeah, George, not a problem. So, but the free didn't stop there. It's like picking him up for dinner. Let's go to Miyagi's. It's free sushi all night long. I was like, free? We were there for like 9 hours. So, but George was a light. He really was a bright light. And as ill as he was, he would just come. He would just come to you with such laughter and joy, and he enjoyed every moment of life. And it was all about eating for him, too. It was all about eating. And what I loved most about him in the short period of time that I got to know him was he ended every conversation with, I love you.
He did?
Yeah. He did. And I was always so moved by that because he just, it was hard not to be close with him. It's hard not to be moved by him.
I'll just add one thing about eating, George. We were going to lunch to an Indian restaurant in Culver City. And when you would get there, you wouldn't sit down and talk a few minutes. You walked in, grabbed a tray, and we just grabbed that food, sat down, and ate. And then went around again.
I took him to Soup Plantation when he was really struggling and physically struggling and ill and on chemo. The guy, soup and fries. I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. Oh yeah, I'm amazed. You can still put it away. It was great.
As long as
I'm Ruth Crofton. I arrived late, but my favorite story, the way I met George was through one of my clients. I'm a business manager for celebrities, and Deborah Hall somehow came across George Roman. And she'd gone to him quite a few times, and she said, Ruthie, we got to go see this guy. So she thought it was what girls do together. Girls' day out was to see a psychic, which I never get because you have your hour and she had her hour, and I'm not going to tell her my stuff, and I don't want to know her stuff. but what George struck me is, he told me very early on, I'm brutally honest, right? And he was so honest. Well, at some point, Deidre has a twin sister in real life, ignoring her soap operatic life. And in real life, she has a real identical twin sister. And for a birthday gift, she gave her sister Andrea a reading from George over the phone. And Ann lives in Virginia Beach. And both Deidre and her sister, nothing female works on them. So Deidre's had kids by a certain woman. Her sister was adopting a child from somewhere in South America. So they go through this reading, and Ann's husband is on the other line, listening in. And so one of the questions Ann asked George is, will the adoption go through smoothly? And George, in his brutally honest, I got a call from Deidre going, who is that asshole? And I'm not paying for that, right? So the next time I see Ann, which she comes out here every now and then, I said, Ann, I heard you had a pretty brutal session with George Roman. She goes, yeah, and she says, but the next thing he said was, you know, have you seen, she's 5 years old, the child, have you seen any indications of her being evil? And Ian says, well, she lies and cheats and steals, but all 5-year-olds do that. And so, you know, 2 years later when I see Ann, I said, do you remember that reading? She goes, oh, I'll never forget that reading. And she said, but, you know, he was right. She's just, you know, but of course we adopted her. There's nobody who could adopt her, but it was just hysterical. And somehow George got back into Deidre's good graces. I don't know. Deidre's a very forgiving person, but she actually probably had a reading from him maybe a month ago, so, you know, he mended that fence, which he was pretty good at doing, but you don't want to hear the straight story. Do not ask George a question. It was brutal.
No, I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, I wish there was a documentary crew here to show